button, because that's the quickest way we can get to some solutions in terms of maybe, putting some more guardrails in place when it comes to Congress. Because, Nicole, I think we've learned from this process, we can't keep baking everything on the next election and the next presidency. People have to get to work and get creative now.
Well, what is the solution other than making sure that Trump is never president again and can't put this into action, Amanda?
Well, for starters, I think we've seen the slide of SCOTUS supersizing the presidency for quite some time. And obviously, this immunity ruling is a wake-up call. I think this is be a time for, Democrats in Congress to really get smart and savvy about reining in executive power before it's too late. I understand that legislation probably can't be passed right now, but this is a good time to start building the case for it. Instead of freaking out about what's going to happen to the presidency, use the power that you have now to build that message, to talk to people, to get solutions. Because I don't want to come off as lecturing as like a Republican that's on here saying Democrats need to do more. But it is my feeling now that MAGA is on the rise just simply because they're outworking everybody on a lot of fronts. Yes, the courts have let us down, the Republican Party has let us down, but they are not stopping. And so I think we need a lot less panicking and a lot more working.
Yeah, Ben, there is this thing. I described it to David Jolly in the last hour as, I am a guest in the Democratic coalition. I don't plan on leaving. I'm like the House guest that won't leave. But there is this sense that Republicans with the most malevolent and malignant leader and the most rotten set of enablers have done too much damage. Who is the Democratic Leonard Leo? Who is the writing the pro-democracy Project 2020? And I actually asked 5 people. I got 5 different answers. 1 is the Constitution. 2 is WhiteHouse.gov. Who is sort of sitting in the quarterback chair to give Joe Biden's vast pro-democracy agenda its marching orders to try to push back against what is, malevolent and malignant are the only words I can come up with to describe Trump's plan for a second term.
Yeah, I think you're right to focus on the question, Nicole, and I'm going to get to it. I just want to make one point about Project 2025 that builds on your point about parties, which is sometimes we make the mistake of just thinking, this is just Trump and Trump's going to come in and somehow this is all emanating from his own interests. When in fact, if you look at that Supreme Court decision, that's the result of decades of court packing by the far right and a relentless focus on the courts, such that we really have no solution right now in the near term for dealing with a 6-3 majority that is changing the Constitution before our very eyes. And so I think we have, first of all, have to make a change now we think about this. It's not just Trump. Trump obviously is the most corrosive force in the party itself, but he's connecting with the worst elements in the party that have been building this authoritarian playbook for some time. And we've seen this, as you and I talked about, in other countries. In terms of who's pushing back, I would point to the necessity of taking action, not just at the federal level. Because you pointed out in your last question, it's difficult. If Trump wins and the Democrats don't control both houses of Congress, well, we'd be dealing with an out-of-control president and a Supreme Court giving them a blank check. Some of the fortification you have to do and some of the groundwork you have to do is at the local and state level. And this has been the case in other countries that have had to try to create antibodies to resist authoritarianism. I think some of the more innovative democratic policy work, both around democracy and around solutions that matter in people's lives, are happening across the country in different states and municipalities. In the first Trump presidency, frankly, his decision just to take climate change, which is one of the examples you used from Project 2025, his decision to pull out of the Paris Agreement did not have that big of an impact in terms of American emissions because a lot of states, California leading them, built their own guardrails around the capacity of the federal government to undo their actions. And so I think part of what the Democratic Party needs to do is not just have a kind of top-down thing where we're waiting for the next presidential election every 4 years with bated breath, although we have to do that, particularly in the next few months. But we need to be building from the bottom up in the same way that the Republican Party has. What are we doing at city levels, at town levels, at state levels? What are we doing with grassroots mobilization? The Democratic Party, Nicole, has a lot of infrastructure. I've been a part of that infrastructure. It's not always connected to each other. Sometimes it's disconnected. There's an environmental movement. There's a movement for reproductive freedom. There's a movement for LGBT rights. This all needs to be woven together in the same way that the right-wing coalitions have been. And so we need that kind of collective effort in everything that we're doing, not just for this election, but frankly, it's going to take a generation just to undo what's already been done. And never mind if Trump gets back in there again.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.
Folks, she shouldn't be allowed to run. Okay, there's virtually no doubt that FBI Director Comey and the great special agents of the FBI will be able to collect more than enough evidence to garner indictments against Hillary Clinton and her inner circle, despite her efforts to disparage them and to discredit them. If she were to win this election, it would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis. In that situation, we could very well have a sitting president under felony indictment and ultimately a criminal trial. It would grind government to a halt.
Wow.
Well, that was then candidate Donald Trump just 3 days before the 2016 election, saying a president under felony indictment would grind the government to a halt and create a constitutional crisis. He got the premise right, just the players wrong, as he is now the first former U.S. president and candidate to be convicted of a crime.
I mean, this is what he said. She should not be able to run. It would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis if someone with a felony was running for president and got elected. It would grind government to a halt. Also, taking note that at that time, Donald Trump actually didn't despise the FBI and hate the FBI. He actually loved the FBI because it's all situational, just like he loves this country in a situational way, just like too many of his supporters only love this country. If Donald Trump is president of the United States, and if Donald Trump's not the president of the United States, they turn on the men and the women of the FBI, they turn on America, they turn on American democracy, they say this country is horrible. It's all very situational, not the way I was raised. I love this country. Turn flags upside down. If my candidate doesn't win, I don't lie for 4 years and say my candidate really won elections. It's crazy, but she would be she should not be able to run an unprecedented constitutional crisis.
The country would grind to a halt.
I mean, so the question, Mika, is really here. Again, it's never about Trump.
No.
It's about... How's it going on your phone?
Just getting your coffee hot.
Oh, you want it hot?
You want it hot.
Okay.
I was letting them know.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's very kind of you.
You're welcome.
So,
Someone's got to do it.
You must have thought I was lagging here and I wasn't awake enough. But, I mean, it's not Donald Trump that we're surprised by. It's the people that continue to follow a guy who is so clearly a hypocrite, who so clearly is situational, who goes from saying he loves the FBI to hating the FBI, who goes from saying America is the worst country in the world to saying America is great again, and then when he loses, saying he didn't lose and America's a terrible country again. And, you know, his family calls this country a shithole country. America, the greatest country on the face of the earth. By just about every measure. I mean, I believe that. I love America. And I love America. I love America.
Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the Russian economy, and specifically to talk about what's going on with Russian airlines and Russian aircraft. Now, if you've been following the channel, you'll know that I've posted a number of videos talking about the problems that Russian airlines have at the moment, because the vast $1 million to buy outright. But if you want to go to the top end of the range and buy an Airbus A380, which carries over 850 passengers, it will set you back more than $450 million. Now, if you're running an airline and you want to buy multiple aircraft, if you want to buy a fleet of 100 jets, obviously the amount of money involved in purchasing all of those aircraft would be absolutely astronomical. So the vast majority of airlines don't do that. They don't buy the planes outright. Rather, they use leasing companies. And this is very similar to a leasing arrangement for your car. So you've got the choice, rather than purchasing a car outright and forking out $50,000 or $100,000, you can sign up on a rental plan whereby you pay an initial down payment and then pay monthly repayments over a 3 or 4 year period. And at the end of that time, you will have a valuation and you can either buy that car outright or hand it back and sign up on a new lease arrangement. And these lease arrangement deals, whereby the airlines that are flying the aeroplanes don't actually own them, they're owned by a lessor, has been used in the airline industry for a long period of time. This is what most airlines do. And this diagram shows the legal structure of how that system operates. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the aircraft manufacturer. So that might be Boeing or Airbus, for example. And for most lease arrangements, they sell the plane outright to an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. And that's a company that's been set up by the financial institution that will own that plane and then lease it to the company that wants to operate it. So the airlines themselves, such as American, Delta, British Airways, Virgin, sign a lease agreement with the owner, the SPV, under which they will make payments on a regular basis. So they have the obligation to maintain the plane, to replace the parts on a regular basis, to make sure everything is done in exact compliance with the manufacturer's guidelines, and that will make sure that all of the insurance remains valid. Now, if we look at the situation above the ownership of the plane, we've got the financial institution that's actually provided the money into the SPV. They're the ones who've set up this arrangement, and the reason they're doing that is that they want to make profit from their aircraft. They bought the aircraft, they've given it to the airline, and now they can sit back and take all of their lease payments over the agreed period. So that might be for 5 years or 10 years. And at the end of that period, they will then have the option of either selling that plane to somebody else or leasing it to another airline, or in fact, maybe extending to the existing airline. Now, on the right-hand side of this chart, you can see the insurance arrangements. And this is really important because the legal battles that are now commencing in the high courts are between the leasing companies and the insurance companies. And what you can see here is that the company that buys the aircraft and leases it to the airline puts in place the insurance that makes sure that in the event of something happening to that plane, that they will be able to make a legitimate claim and be paid back. And you can see on the right-hand side of this chart that we've got an insurance representative, so somebody who's fronting up the arrangement, and they will then syndicate that risk to a number of different insurers. So unlike your car where you just go to one insurance company, because we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars per plane, insurance companies don't want to take individual risk. If a plane suddenly blows up in the sky, that would be a big hit to a single insurance company. So they like to syndicate the risk, spread it around, so that in the event of that happening, they will only be hit with something like a $20 or $30 million claim rather than $200 or $300 million. And if we quickly jump back to the airlines here, the reason that the airlines want to set up these arrangements are that it enables them to take on more planes. So let's imagine that you're an airline company and you've got $250 million that you want to invest into new aircraft. You have the choice either of buying one single Boeing 747, which would cost you $250 million, or if you go down the lease route, whereby you may only have to put down 10% of that aircraft value up front, that would mean that you have to put $25 million into one of these lease arrangements. So your $250 million would mean that you could sign up 10 lease arrangements and be able to run 10 aircraft rather than just one. And obviously from an operator's point of view, the more aircraft that they're running, the more profit that they can make, and therefore the more cash they can build up, and so they can then take on more aircraft. So this is basically airline leverage. By using these lease arrangements, it enables them to spread their capital more thinly, to operate more aircraft and to make more profits. Following the commencement of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February 2022, the airline industry was one of the first that came to a grinding halt. Most airline operators stopped flying in and out of Russia within days of the invasion started. And what that meant is that there were a lot of aircraft grounded in Russia. And it was estimated that there were around 450 aircraft on the ground in Russia at that time that were not owned outright by Russian airlines. So these were either planes that were leased by Russian airlines or were leased by other airline operators who'd been flying jets in and out of Russia. And so as they were landing in Russia, they were then held there, and that caused a problem for a lot of those owners and operators. Now, the imposition of widespread sanctions that took place against Russia throughout 2022 meant that most airline operators were unable to retrieve their aircraft because you couldn't simply send over a pilot and get him to fly the aircraft out of Russia, because there are lots of rules and regulations with regards to airspace, and the Russian authorities wouldn't have let those planes take off if they knew that they were simply going to be relocated to the USA or Europe or somewhere else, so that that plane could then be used for other purposes. So essentially what happened was that Russia seized all of those 450 aeroplanes. Now that was a major problem for the airlines that were operating those routes, and obviously those companies could no longer run those services, and this led to huge losses being experienced by many airlines, particularly the companies that were dependent on flying in and out of Eastern Europe, particularly into Russia. And we've seen those companies struggling over the last couple of years, and things are gradually starting to get better. It's been a bit of a disastrous time for the airline industry over the last 5 years, because firstly, they had the COVID-19 pandemic, which grounded aircraft all across the world and stopped a lot of international travel. So that hit them very hard. And then those operators who were dependent on Eastern European flights also had this secondary impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it's been a bit of a disaster if you've been running airlines that fly across Russian airspace. But it's also heavily impacted on the aircraft leasing companies and the insurance companies. So let's talk about what the impact on the leasing companies has been. As we saw from the diagram earlier, an aircraft leasing company is basically a financial institution. What they do is provide the capital, the cash, to be able to buy the plane. They then hand it over to an airline who actually operates and runs the craft and makes payments. So basically these companies are loan providers, and they're making money from the financial arrangement. And when Russia seized 450 aircraft, it caused these companies major problems, because their main clients, the airlines, were in a world of pain in terms of they'd lost a lot of their services, so therefore they were no longer receiving the revenue, but they still had to make the payments on those planes. So the airlines turned around to the leasing operators and said, we can no longer keep servicing that particular plane because it's trapped in Russia. It's been seized by the Russian authorities. So we're defaulting on this lease arrangement. And that left the lease companies with a couple of options. Firstly, they could try and repossess those aircraft. This is what these companies would do in a normal scenario if an airline went bust and they had to go and repossess that plane. They would send over people, send a pilot, take over the aircraft and fly it back to somewhere that they were comfortable with. However, that wasn't really an option in the Russian situation, because firstly, Russia wouldn't have allowed those aircraft to take off, and secondly, there were sanctions against Russia which prevented all of these repossession companies from being able to actually go to Russia and do their business. So repossessing the aeroplanes wasn't really an option. So the other option from the leasing company's point of view is to claim on their insurance. To turn to the insurance company and say, this plane has now been lost, it's no longer available, and therefore we'd like to make a claim of $250 million. Thank you very much. But obviously from the insurance company's point of view, they weren't simply going to hand over $250 million to all of these lease operators. They wanted to know exactly what that claim related to. What clause in the contract were they actually calling on? And this has been the bone of contention between the lease operators and the insurance companies over the last 2 years. So let's talk about this from the insurance company's point of view. The insurers of the aircraft under the lease agreements are obliged to pay out in the event that something catastrophic happens to that plane. So if a plane blows up in midair, it's a clear-cut case. The insurance company will then have to pay the leasing company for the value of that plane. But the situation with regards to the seizure of these aircraft by Russia is obviously a first. This hasn't happened before. And insurance companies are claiming that they don't have to pay out because those aircraft still exist. And they say that it's the obligation of the leasing company to recover that aircraft, that they have to go and get them from Russia, and then they can carry on with the lease arrangements. Now, obviously, as we've just discussed, Russia isn't playing ball with regards to that arrangement. They wouldn't allow these aircraft to be repossessed. And also, in many situations, the Russian authorities have actually changed the law and have taken ownership of these planes. So they've now said that they're owned by the Russian state. So this is a very grey area. And the insurance companies are basically doing everything under their powers to try to avoid paying out. And interestingly, Swiss Re has actually claimed that this is an act of war and therefore is an exclusion under their insurance policies. Swiss Re's court filings argue that Western support for Ukraine implicates these nations in the conflict, thereby redefining the concept of war beyond the presence of foreign troops. Insurers are attempting to broaden the term to include countries in conflicts that are not
Welcome to
Greetings, minions and associates. If you're already a minion you would like to type, please hit like. If you would like to become a minion, please hit follow. If you would like to confess, please do so in the comments. And if you would like to evangelize, please share. This is David Page here. This is the Autistic Page. Today we are going to be looking at Eileen Lamb, Token, as I like to call her. We're going to take a look at Token's newest video here on the Autism Speaks channel on YouTube. This was done yesterday, so it would have been, what, July 1st? Is that right? What's today? Yes, today's the 2nd. So it was July 1st. She put out this video yesterday. I have not watched this video yet. This is my blind react to this video. So this is my blind react to this video. I have not seen this yet. Eileen Lamb, Eileen Lamb, excuse me. She is the media, like, executive director, whatever. Their executive media person. She handles all their media junk. And she is autistic. She's the one person that they know of, or that they admit, or that they will say is autistic. I don't. They have 216 employees, and she's the only one that they say. Now, being that it's Autism Speaks, they would die to tell us that they had 1 million autistic employees, but they don't, and they don't. They aren't going to work that hard to actually get them. But what my purpose here today is to see how many lies Eileen Lamb will tell here, and to correct her misinformation or disinformation. I am probably now becoming one of the experts on Autism Speaks, and Eileen Lamb. I probably have more videos and more hours of live streams on Autism Speaks now in this last year, that I think than anybody actually. And yet I've never talked to anybody from Autism Speaks or anything. I sure would like to talk to some people that have worked there. But anyway, this is Eileen Lamb. And first off, her audio is terrible. This is in her office, by the way, at home. And it's scary that I know this, but I do. I'm pretty sure this is not at Autism Speaks anyway. I'm pretty sure this is her home. And this because of a video that she did where she was all over her house talking about her kids and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm stalking her that much. Just a little.
Welcome to Just Another Autism podcast. In this podcast, I, Eileen Lam, explore the personal journeys of people in the autism community, from autistic individuals navigating daily life to the caregivers, educators, and employers who support them. Each week, we shed light on the different ways autism shapes lives, offering first-person perspectives from every angle of the community.
First lie. Definitely not every angle of the community. They refuse to talk to me. They refuse to do an interview with me because my angle is very different than Autism Speaks. And I want to know why she made like $250,000 as a bonus last year, as I understand it. I want to know why Keith Wargo gets just his expenses account is as much as Autism Speaks gives out to all autistic people, directly to autistic families. So I have hard questions like that they don't want to answer. So no, they will not speak to me. They told me, they sent me an email and said that they are, out of the 216 employees they have, they are all too busy to speak to me. I am the only person, and actually autistic person, to my knowledge, myself, is the only person that they have actually discriminated against, and that's an actually autistic person.
And today,
as far as giving interviews, I don't know that they've refused an interview to anyone else but me, an actually autistic person. So an actually autistic person is the only person that they have actually discriminated against. Now, if they have discriminated against more people and they wish to refute that statement, then fine, they can refute that statement, and maybe they have discriminated against more people. I don't know. But to my knowledge, I am the only person that they have discriminated against.
I am pleased to be joined by Andrew Arbo. Andrew is an autistic self-advocate with over 6 years of professional experience helping autistic individuals be empowered by sharing his experiences with...
Okay, if this is just an interview and not about Autism Speaks, then we'll just watch the interview and see what this is about, because I'm
freelancing brand and public...
Oh, by the way, this person is going to have an ABA Pro Autism Speaks perspective, period. End of story. Guarantee you, this is they're not going to be hostile or combative towards Autism Speaks, guarantee you. So just with her little statement up front there that about from all views and so forth, that's a lie.
Speaking services.
And she knew it when she said it.
Thank you for coming on, Andrew. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I'm sure, and that's a lot. So I'm gonna try to really ground it a lot more. But I kind of like an autistic self-advocate, and yes, I don't have no preference on the language base. Like I want people to be vax on that. Like I don't care on any preference, so you could use whatever with this podcast of yours. But I'm not only a self-advocate, but I've also worked as a teacher assistant over at a private autism school in Connecticut. And then probably one of the major topics for this podcast is I also have a freelance brand where I do kind of like a freelance public speaking. Like I provide public speaking on my personal experiences, kind of just lived experience and kind of professional experience. Like I speak around various Connecticut, like the East Coast states, hopefully a little more New York and some Pennsylvania, but I'm in no rush. Massachusetts has been giving me a lot of clientele over there. Like I've worked with such providers like the Association for Autism and Neurodiversity, or ANE, before the name change. I've done presentations with the Federation of Children with Special Needs, and then a few other places in Connecticut. Like I spoke in their ASPE work conference. It's an employment first group that's kind of nationwide. So I've done a lot of different public speakings, and it's all on lived experience and anything that I've actually done. Like there's a topic I wouldn't, with any topics I don't have experience, I don't bother with it. And then I'm just kind of doing my own thing. I'm pretty neutral with most autism stuff. So I just approach it and just want to work with everyone in general.
Awesome. And I know you also have worked on driving with autism. And I know that's a resource that a lot of people, autistic people and caregivers have benefited from. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, and first thing, because I was the founder of that, the program does not exist as this podcast day currently does. So yeah, I used to want it. It used to be like a webinar series I hosted for a firm, and things didn't work out. It just hit the mark. I was everyone including me, like the market wasn't there, and I was over ambitious. So certain things didn't work out, and I had to kind of let it go. So that program doesn't exist. I don't want to give any false information. But I have done driving accuracy. That's kind of was one of the cornerstones. It kind of like the starting point of my accuracy. Like there wasn't really a lot in Connecticut for driving resources, and I was like trying to figure out because I used to be in community college years ago, and to be in the disability like specialist field, like you need like a license of sorts for a lot of the therapy and mental positions. So I'm always for kind of early starting, like figuring out like the jobs and what transportation do I need and what would give me the least kind of barriers as much as possible. The main barriers now is just kind of bachelor's that I'm kind of remedying by the end of this year. I'll be graduating with my bachelor's. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that will go. But I've always like promoting proactiveness and just kind of like be able to kind of find ways to kind of help someone learn how to drive. Like I've done a lot of accuracy consultations and it led to driving with autism. But nowadays I kind of channel that. I channel the similar energy for my public speaking one. It's kind of like my next kind of latest thing that I've been working on. I still do some driving. I still do driver talks. Like I did a talk through community autism resources in Massachusetts. And that one, my dog was kind of terrorizing me in a Zoom, like kind of he's like he was 6 months during that time. He's 8 months now of this recording, and he would always like grab like the hand right here. So I was kind of grabbing it and present at the same time. It was pretty hilarious, and then he swept afterwards just to rub it off me. But I just do talks like that, and also on my website, I do have a blog on driver resources in all 50 states, kind of like driver schools, and there's like specialty driver schools that exist in selective states. Like I kind of channeled everything I was doing in the past and made it just like a resource that anyone can use in all 50 states.
That's awesome.
Oh,
And
and I
link to
forgot,
that.
sorry for interrupting. And I also have the Connecticut public passenger endorsement where I drive students to community settings and job sites. I almost forgot about that. I keep forgetting about that. So yeah.
Amazing. And it sounds like you do so much for the autism and autistic community. Did you face any challenges in your advocacy? Any big successes that you want to share?
Probably a lot. I mean, the fact even for technically Drive with Autism failed, but starting it along with the people that supported me, that's kind of like taking the big success along with that and just saying that, hey, I tried. Hey, I tried. And then for other successes, one of those was doing a keynote, presentation with Autism Connections in Massachusetts. Like I did one like last year.
I
And
tell you what, this is very, very wise of Eileen to do this very, very benign, uh, very, very benign kind of interview thing. Now she won't interview me, and she sure as hell won't let me interview anyone from Autism Speaks. They are forbidden to talk to me, to interview with me. They are not allowed to. I am on the blacklist officially. They sent me an email that said that all 216 of them are too busy to speak to me, including the janitors. The janitors, they're too busy to speak to me too. So
it was one of the reasons I kind of jump started in my public speaking. And I imagine it'd be questions of how I got that started. So I'm going to try not to go too much in detail there. But that was actually really cool. And really, I lost my train of thought. That train kind of went out the window, but that was cool. And then just like and I've been realizing it today, I was kind of reflecting on like my past accuracy, just kind of like the few people that I did help get their licenses through emails and like Zoom chats that was very fulfilling.
That's awesome. How many people have you helped? Thousands? Hundreds?
No, not that much. I mean, driving is still pretty niche. Like, there's been a lot more there's been more research. Like, one of the things I forgot to mention was I'm kind of like a consultant over at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Like, I was on their current study, which might be coming out. I don't want to say too much, but if you search it up, I did a blog with them a year ago because I originally got involved with them in 2022, and I couldn't really say a lot. There wasn't too much work going on until last year, and now it's kind of like, kind of there, kind of not. But I'm just kind of waiting on the next thing before they finalize it. So it's still going to take time. I've did a research course where it just takes time, just setting up, getting the approvals and all that. It's a process. It's probably something I would put in my freelance side because it originated through when I did Drive with Autism, but now it's kind of like I consider it like a freelance as one of the possible freelancing I could do.
Do you have any advice to share with parents and autistic people who might be struggling in learning to drive?
Really good question, and
Eileen, why parents? Why not go directly straight to autistic people? You're called Autism Speaks, and you go to parents first, and then you go to autistic people. You're supposedly autistic. What's going on here? Why are you not advocating for us?
One thing I want to say is I want to be very careful of I don't want to speak for the whole population because there are people that benefit a lot more with buses, Ubers, and certain states call it paratransit, which kind of, like more fixed bus routes. So I would kind of want to get that out of the way. It's kind of like finding the right information. And I kind of addressed this because resource finding, and actually in the blog that I did through CHOP, there was a study about caretakers about going through kind of finding driving resources. And one of the findings was the lack of trained professionals or driver instructors that know autism. And there was also expensive, which was one of the failings from Driving with Autism, where it was kind of pricey for the webinar series. So it's an interesting study. I don't know if it's up for free because with research, not all of it's free. I have done a lot of autism papers through my time at the college I'm at, Charlie Oak State College, and Bereaking, sometimes finding research that you could use for research. Not fun. Like I try to go for the ones I can actually print out and
This guy's just always right there on the edge of saying something.
at least read it. So there, and hopefully, did I address all the questions? Like I can get kind of overboard with this. Did I address all the points?
That's really good. Perfect. Straight to the point, concise. It's good.
But finding that, yeah, and then parents, it's kind of like finding the resources and then finding different strategies that can work. Like there's actually a lot of things, and like investing in life skills because a lot of that can lead to driving, like taking the bus or like doing doing stuff independently or having like guided help if that makes sense. like those can kind of be some big differences. I think it's called scaffolding. I think it's called that. It's like a special education term. I work as a teacher assistant, and I've done a lot of one-to-one works at where I'm at. So a lot of the language has rubbed off me. So, and I'm taking an early childhood education class, so more of it's even rubbed off me. So I'm starting to kind of say it in everyday speech.
It's good. You do so much. It's impressive. And I want to go back to your speaking engagements because that's pretty new for you, right? And so what made you want to start speaking publicly? Because that's hard for so many people. And how did you get started?
Really good question. If that, it was kind of like it was born through my driving accuracy. It was born through that because I've done presentations, and that's where a lot of the doors open there. It's kind of like going the Temple Grandin approach is just kind of like finding those like little doors that you could find. That's the best way to describe it. And if you read enough of her books, you kind of notice like she speaks very highly about going through the back door, having like a work portfolios. And I've always spoke at different events, even during my past years when I was networking in Connecticut. And it just led to over time, I'd started to do presentations for nonprofits. And what I was doing with Driving with Autism, it led to several engagements and also did a webinar series, which technically counts for public speaking experiences. When I had all the job changes and I got back to working in special education, I was trying to design my website just to kind of take the things that worked with Driving with Autism, but I kind of wanted to kind of do my own thing. This kind of like offers me kind of like my own take on freedom. I don't want to be too techno on freelancing because people have different styles for that. I really like the side, on doing it on the side. Just the most freedom. It's not like I need to restrict myself. And a lot of it I don't have any startup or like those, what's it called? It's a business term, startup cost, or those side costs where I have to think about. It just whenever I have time to do it, and if I could schedule time away from my main job, or if it's like a big conference, I actually have no choice to schedule time off, I could do it. Just kind of like that flexibility, like that choice. And I kept getting several engagements I paid, including that keynote presentation there. I'm not going to
Eileen, stop him.
boost. I'm not going to boost
Save
here.
him.
Just say it was fixed price. I went all out cheaper, but they
Save
told
him,
me they had to
Eileen.
pay this there. And afterwards, I just shut up. And I kept getting the small term ones. They just like I remember one parent group actually sent me a check, and I was like, I don't remember seeing a check. Like I do not remember that. I was like, oh. And then I had the state of Connecticut pay me for being in a panel. It was, I think it was something consumer protection. It was like for like lived experience, like one of those diversity summit things.
Nice.
And after a while, and then was doing my website design just to kind of highlight and do like a work portfolio version of all my content. If you look at it now, it lists everything from not just my public speaking and different offerings like professional development, but I've also do freelance and my professional history certifications and all that. Like if you look at it now, it's very, very detailed, and it's kind of like a second home instead of LinkedIn. LinkedIn being the first home, and people could see like all the stuff I post there. But basically, they don't want this to kind of get derailed. But it's kind of like after getting numerous engagements that I kind of paid, I was like, you know what? Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could actually do this on the side. So it kind of convinced me, and I actually have done a lot of traveling thanks to that. Like I spoke at a few conferences. I spoke was
Eileen,
the
you
ARC of
have to stop
Massachusetts
him.
Transition Journeys Conference. It was like a biannual event, which was really cool. I spoke about college. And I've also spoken in a random New Hampshire autism symposium, a conference, definitely like a event that's meant to be more like North Carolina, like Utah, like it seemed more in the southern states. And for some reason, for this year, 2024, they decided to do it up here in New Hampshire. And I drove in there before, or drove in New Hampshire before, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna submit a proposal, and I just did it, and they accepted it. And I was like, all right, sure, why not? It's not every day I get to do this, so just kind of like circumstance and just people wanting to see more and realize that I could do it. And it actually helped out pay for the rest of my college. So basically, I'm all set. I still use grants and everything just because I'm not a believer in college loan. I know it's there and it could technically still be a good thing, but it's like if I want to be less in the crowd of people that are going through student loans to the day until the day I retire, if I can avoid that, sure. Sure, like I would gradually avoid it. So it got kind of long-winded, but it just opportunities, and I was like, you know what? I should just invest to it. And I'm gonna see because I want to kind of build my brand over time. Just whenever kind of continuing just having that freedom of just doing it and not worry about like business costs and all that because it just takes too much. And I learned from driving with autism that I just don't do the business. I kind of just
He
want to
even
do
knew
it on the
it.
side just whenever I have time and balance it through my main job. So yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any advice for people who want to do what you're doing, who are inspired by you?
Next week was good because I actually kind of touched upon this. I was actually back in Autism Connections for this year's conference. So I actually there was a speaker there. And then there was a person that's talked about wanting to get into it. And I said, and the best way to describe it, and I told this person, I waited till the right time. I have done work in schools, and I've seen enough students that kind of just barge in, that's kind of in your face and be like, Andrew, Andrew, can I talk to you in there? And they have to kind of model that. You have to wait for your turn. So I just waited, and it's like, best way to describe it, it's kind of like starting with small Lego sets. I know it seems silly, but if you think about it, like you see the small Lego sets, and that's kind of like a way to build yourself, and you get more confidence with the medium-sized sets. And then at some point, you could tackle that Death Star Lego set, or I've been seeing this on Facebook, like that Millennium Falcon, that like alternate set, that like big box is almost like a video game console box. It's like, but over time you get more used to it, and you start tackling like kind of like the big events there. And that's something that happened. I did small talks, and then eventually I started doing a lot more traveling. And if I want to, I could tackle the other states. I'm just keeping the East Coast. And then for any like out of East Coast states, I do virtual. Just it makes sense. And as much as I love to do like stuff like the Milestone Autism Conference, I think that occurred in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. It was just something recent. I saw it through LinkedIn. Like if I need more years for that. And not to mention I'd rather do it when I have a full-time job and, like I don't want to take up too much time off because I actually dislike taking time off. So just kind of just building yourself over time and then learning certain tools. Like one of the tools, Canva, which is like free website, kind of like a free website, kind of forms and like social media kind of designing website. And you don't need to pay for it. It's free to use, and it's like a free kind of builder. Like you can design, you can have this text box speed, whatever you feel like it. You have this certain font, you can include your own pictures. If you go on my website, if you want a good example, I have a downloadable ebook on my public speaking. If you go down the homepage, and you'll know you see it because you will see a picture of me and my dog, Sky, as like the official mascot of the page. If you go down, if you click on the little ebook, there'll be directions on there. I designed that from that website, free to use, and I printed it out. So it's kind of like serve as like a good sample book I could use when I'm out in resource fairs. Like you could find some really cool free to use, and even my website's designed by Reverie, which is like a free website builder, and it comes with free search engine
I might as well give him the last 5 minutes.
stuff, which is basically SEO, which is like the stuff that Google notices
Oh
you,
my
and but you could
goodness.
search it through Google search and all that other stuff. So there's actually a lot of free tools that you could use, and depending on how you use it, it could aid you really well, and you not just freelancing, but kind of any business in general. I don't want to be too technical, and it could be a featured topic I could be presenting on, but I'm trying to restrict myself. Last April, I designed like 6, 7 topics, and I went way too far. Like one of them, I was writing it when I was in an autism panel, just something we need to focus on. I still paid attention during the panel, so I get too many ideas. I'm forcing myself to stay like this until next year.
Well, this is great, Andrew. Thank you so much for sharing. I have one last question for you. Are you working on anything new? Do you want to take your advocacy to another level? And also, can you tell our listeners where they can find you online if they want to connect with you?
Okay, I can do my website. The best way to contact me, for my website, it is you can type me up. It'd be easy to Google search my name, but for the website, it's Andrew Arboe, Arboe. I guess some people have trouble with my last name. Webry, WEEBLY.com. And you can also Google me, and also have a LinkedIn, and also have a Facebook that features the same name as my logo, Andrew Arboe, Autistic Self-Advocate and Speaker. And it's also on Instagram as well. So there's a lot of different ways you could find me. And my email is my last name with the A, the first initial A with gmail.com. That'd be a way to find me. And then for like final advice or just anything, oh yeah, future projects, right. I don't want to say a lot of things, but I'm currently working on several of those, and I'm trying to get like input on those. I don't want to say a lot, and I don't want to hint too much because I kind of believe to have it more ready. Also, don't want to be like game developers when they release a product and then it's half finished. Like I don't want to go that route. Like I rather like to have it complete as possible and then just release it on the right time, just to keep up with my brand's kind of like that self freedom of like whenever I feel like it and feel ready, like it's always there. And I'm hoping to do more certifications. Like I'm certified through that IBCCES, that like international certifications. It's a big name. It's a big name, and it fools me a mouthful. But I'm hoping to go into their autism specialist certification. It's like 8 years of a bachelor's and then less if you have a master's. But I'm gonna take my time before I go with master's. I also just need a break from schooling after I get my bachelor's. So I'm hoping I could go through just the bachelor's and then 8 years of autism experience and hopefully get that. Maybe invest in ANE's trainings, but I'm gonna see. But I have many ideas I'm working on what makes sense. So there's a lot of exciting things to come up, and I'm just kind of trying to pace myself. But I'm probably gonna be working on something tonight because why not? And I have a day left before my next college class come up. The 2 out of the 4 classes left. So yep, so big things are coming up here. Is there anything I'm missing?
No.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that you're missing. I Eileen, you are very, very wise. Very, very wise doing the very, very benign interview type content now where there are no questions, where you're not I'm glad well, I think you should just return to the mind your misdirections uh series, because that gave me lots of content. I know you're not going to do that because that gave me lots of content. And so, but this was a very wise move, Eileen. Very, very wise move. I'll be making videos, following up on your videos from here on out. Thank you very much. Oh, my goodness gracious. Uh, all right. Well, I think I'm going to call it good for today. I sure wished I would have gotten a lot more out of that. I thought I was going to get so much more out of that, but the the very few, the very little bit that she did talk, she did lie. But other than that, that was just the other guy's thing. So that's good to go. So don't forget, I do come on periodically, and trying to find someone that will defend Autism Speaks, because Autism Speaks Eileen Lamb refuses to do so, as does Keith Wargo, the CEO. They refuse to answer my questions.
Oh, thank you so much for.
They refuse to do an interview with me. So you know what? I will I'll just have to keep on just keeping up with their videos and doing response videos to their videos that they do put out, and we'll just go tit for tat on that one. This is David Page. Screw them. Flap harder.